Easter Island sits in the middle of the South Pacific Ocean. The nearest inhabited land is Pitcairn Island, 2,075 kilometers away. The nearest continental coast is Chile, 3,700 kilometers to the east. In every direction, there is nothing but open water for as far as the eye can see. No landmarks, no birds, no debris to follow, just horizon. And yet, at some point between 700 and 1200 AD, human beings found it. They sailed across thousands of kilometers of featureless ocean in wooden canoes, with no compass, no map, no satellite, no certainty that land even existed in the direction they were heading. They found a 164 square kilometer volcanic island hidden in the largest ocean on the planet. The question that has haunted historians, archaeologists, and oceanographers ever since is devastatingly simple. How? The Polynesians were the greatest navigators the ancient world ever produced. While Europeans were still clinging to coastlines terrified of open water, Polynesian sailors had already colonized every habitable island in a triangle stretching from Hawaii in the north to New Zealand in the south to Easter Island in the east, 65 million square kilometers of ocean. They did not do this by accident. They navigated by stars, memorizing the rising and setting points of hundreds of constellations. They read ocean swells, the way deep Pacific waves travel in consistent directions for thousands of kilometers, and the way islands disturb those swells in ways a trained body can feel from kilometers away. They followed birds. They watched cloud formations over land that they could not yet see. They were not lucky. They were the finest sailors who ever lived. When the first settlers arrived at Easter Island, they found something extraordinary. The island was covered in dense subtropical forest, millions of trees, including a species of giant palm that grew to 30 meters high. The surrounding ocean teemed with fish, dolphins and seabirds. Freshwater lakes filled the volcanic craters. The soil was rich and deep. The settlers, probably no more than a few dozen people in the beginning, had found one of the most resource-rich environments in the Pacific. They called the island Rapa Nui. They built homes, cleared land for agriculture, grew sweet potatoes, taro and yams. They fished the surrounding waters. They multiplied. The population grew slowly at first, then faster as the land proved generous. At its peak, Rapa Nui may have supported a population of 15 to 20,000 people on an island smaller than the city of Liverpool. For a time, it was paradise. At some point, the people of Rapa Nui began to build the moai. Nobody fully understands why. The statues, nearly 900 of them, are carved from compressed volcanic ash at a single quarry called Rano Raraku in the island's northeast. They are enormous. The average moai stands 4 meters tall and weighs 12 tons. The largest ever completed was 10 meters tall. The largest ever attempted, still half-carved inside the quarry, would have been 21 meters tall and weighed an estimated 270 tons. Each statue depicts a stylized human figure, head large, features severe, arms tight at the sides. They were placed on stone platforms called ahu, facing inland, watching over the villages below. The most debated question in archaeology is also the simplest. How did people without wheels, without metal tools, and without draft animals move 12-ton stone statues across an island? To move the moai, they needed timber, enormous quantities of it. Logs were used as rollers, as levers, as sledges. Ropes were woven from the fibrous bark of the palm trees. As the statue building accelerated, driven by competition between the island's clans, each trying to build larger and more impressive moai than their rivals, the demand for timber grew. The forest began to shrink, slowly at first, then faster. Trees were felled for the statues, trees were felled for canoes, trees were felled for firewood, for building, for agriculture. The giant palms that had covered the island for thousands of years were not replanted. The birds that had nested in them vanished. The topsoil, no longer held in place by roots, began to wash into the sea. The fish stocks that had sustained the population for generations began to collapse as the coral reefs died. The paradise was eating itself. By around 1600, the island had been almost completely deforested. Without trees, the Rapa Nui could no longer build ocean-going canoes. They were trapped. The greatest navigators in human history, descendants of people who had crossed thousands of kilometers of open ocean, were now unable to leave an island 164 square kilometers in size. There was no escape. Food production collapsed. The sweet potato fields failed without topsoil. The fish had gone. The birds had gone. The fresh water sources became contaminated. Clan began to war against clan over the diminishing resources. The Moai, those enormous statues that had consumed the forests, became targets. Enemy clans attacked each other's platforms and toppled their rivals' statues, desecrating the ancestors they represented. The island that had once sustained 20,000 people could no longer feed a fraction of that number. People began to starve. As the Moai building culture collapsed, a new religion emerged from the wreckage, the Birdman cult. Every year, representatives of the island's clans would compete in a brutal challenge, swim through shark-infested waters to a tiny offshore islet, climb its rocky face and retrieve the first egg laid by the sooty tern, a migratory seabird that returned to Rapa Nui each spring. The first man to return to shore with an unbroken egg won for his clan the right to rule the island for a year. Their leader became the Birdman, half human, half god, their head shaved and painted red, their nails grown long. The Birdman cult replaced the statue religion precisely because it was built on scarcity. In a world where food had run out, the one resource that still arrived every year was the seabird. The island had adapted its entire belief system around what was left. On Easter Sunday, 1722, a Dutch admiral named Jacob Roggeveen became the first European to sight Easter Island. He named it after the day he found it. What he saw when he went ashore was a population in crisis. Several thousand people living in a landscape almost entirely without trees, their great stone platforms crumbling, their society fractured by decades of clan warfare. Roggeveen's crew fired on the islanders during their first encounter, killing at least a dozen. 50 years later, a Spanish expedition arrived and claimed the island for the Spanish crown. The Rapa Nui people signed a document they could not read. In 1774, Captain James Cook arrived and recorded a population he estimated at no more than 700 people, a fraction of the thousands who had once lived there. The outside world had found Easter Island, and its arrival would finish what the deforestation had started. The worst was still to come. In 1862, Peruvian slave raiders arrived at Easter Island in the night. They seized approximately 1,500 people, including the island's entire educated class, its priests, its oral historians, the men who could read the island's unique undeciphered script called Rongorongo. They were taken to Peru and forced to work in guano mines. International pressure eventually forced Peru to repatriate the survivors, but by then, disease had killed all but 15 of them. Those 15 carried smallpox back to Easter Island when they returned. The epidemic that followed killed the majority of the island's remaining population. By 1877, only 111 Rapa Nui people were alive on Easter Island. From an estimated peak of 15 to 20,000, a civilization had been reduced to 111 people. The oral history, the knowledge of Rongorongo, the cultural memory of why the Moai had been built, all of it was gone. Today, Easter Island is home to around 8,000 people, most of them descended from the 111 survivors. Chile annexed the island in 1888 and leased the entire landmass to a British sheep farming company, confining the Rapa Nui to a single settlement for decades. They were not given Chilean citizenship until 1966. The Moai still stand, or lie, across the island. Many have been re-erected by archaeologists. Some still wait, half-finished, in the quarry where they were abandoned the day the island society finally broke. The Rongorongo script remains undeciphered. No one alive can read it. The knowledge of why the Moai were built, what they meant, who they represented, died with the educated class taken by the slave ships in 1862. Easter Island remains the greatest case study in human-caused environmental collapse in history, and the most isolated people who ever lived left behind a mystery that nobody has ever solved.